Okay, thanks, See-Kiong, for your kind introduction. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are joining us from the world. So my name is Abhik Roychoudhury. I'm a professor in the computer science department, focusing specifically on trustworthy systems and software security. So I will talk about my own research, but I'll probably try to go from the general to the specific and then step back into the general. So start about PhD research in general, then PhD work or research work in computer science, and then share a little bit about my own experience and try to step back with some general comments. So stay tuned. Yes, as See-Kiong mentioned, this title is maybe a little bit mysterious, but it's good to have a little bit of mystery about the ingredients of PhD research. So we are, of course, here to talk about PhD, and since PhD is such a multifaceted thing, so there is always the possibility for us to discuss one aspect of it and then characterize it accordingly, just like the elephant, whether we look at the tusk or the tail and characterize it accordingly. But probably we will try to do a holistic or a multifaceted discussion of PhD in this talk. So when we talk about the PhD research, and it's very important to clarify that there are different ways that we can talk about it, different views. One is a very process-oriented view that, okay, this is what I need to do to enter, this is what I need to do to qualify, and what exactly would be the process, the journey. Another one is outcome. Certainly, people would be interested in outcomes. What would be the outcome at the end of the PhD? Would I be an academic? Would I be an industry leader? These are reasonable questions to ask. Another one is skills. Okay, what skills do I need? Am I suited for PhD research? Can I grow my skills? Can I learn something? This is also a reasonable question to ask and answer. And finally, probably the biggest one is mindset, that how will it help me grow my mindset? How will it modify my mindset? So in this talk, I'll focus more on the skills and the mindset. And really the view that we take is that PhD research requires and grows skills. It, of course, requires some initial skills and grows them. And in the process, develops a mindset. As a byproduct, there could be pleasant outcomes, and along the way, there is a process. So we will be focusing more on the skills and the mindset, and probably a little bit less about the outcomes and process, even though I will talk about the outcomes. So this is what brings me to the title of my talk, The Little Bit of Mystery, the three I's of PhD research. So I'll discuss these three I's, contextualize them in the context of computer science, and probably talk a little bit about my own research, very little, and then towards the end, end with this third I, which I think is very, very important. And oftentimes when we do PhD research, we talk about the first two I's and not the third one. So let's get down to it. So PhD, of course, requires skills. All of you are attending this talk. We are very happy that you are attending this talk and you are interested in PhD research at NUS. All of you are clearly skillful people. So PhD research requires some skills. Let's start with some fairly basic skills. Of course, you need to read a paper, state of the art, judge its contributions, and so on. Identify emerging trends, check the feasibility, chart the growth of the research area. These kind of things we consider as basic skills in PhD research. So why is it basic? Because of course it involves effort and discipline. It involves proactively looking outside and doing so analytically. But in research, we are expected to be analytical, particularly in computer science research. Certainly being analytical is an important component of it. So this is something, this is certainly needed, but we would need to go beyond it. So this brings us to the very first I of PhD research. Of course, you need to have initiative and interest. The topic that you choose, you need to have you need to take initiative, you need to have interest, you need to proactively and not reactively look outside, and you need to do so analytically. That's certainly reasonable, and that's very, very important. Less obvious skills is that you have to choose the right problems at the right time. Okay. And then when I say choose, it's like choosing from a known set of problems. Maybe there are certain known set of problems, but which one to choose? Will it be impactful if you study it now? What background is needed? In some sense, are you the right person? So this kind of skill, which is a little bit more than the interest, is to look yourself in the mirror. So you are a diamond, but reflect on it. Where do you need to polish the diamond? So and the reflection, the internal reflection. So this is the second eye. This is what I call as the second eye, the introspection and the intuition. That means you have a deep introspection of what kind of research you are suited for. You develop a deep intuition on that topic that you choose it carefully, and you develop a deep intuition. This two eyes would already lead to a fairly good piece of research, but one could go beyond. And that's really the content of this talk, which is the often forgotten third eye. What is it? So I'll disclose it at the end of the talk, but we will build up towards it. So the least obvious skills is that to develop a clarity, and this is really what we would want for a PhD work at NUS, is to develop a clarity about what is a research contribution. Okay, and research contribution is inherently qualitative in nature. It is not quantitative. It is not denoted by research papers, the degree, the certain number of citations, but it is inherently qualitative in nature. Of course, in the process, you will have papers, you will have degree, you will have citations, and all of those are important. That's certainly an important indicator. But in terms of developing the clarity, when you are in the process of doing the research, there is a process of developing a clarity about what the contribution is. And there you really need to reason that, okay, this is what I can do to move the needle. I can also do these things. These would be incremental. But if I do this mega step, that would be really moving the needle. And the important thing which would distinguish our research is that not only if we solve problems, but if we formulate problems where we make space for others to contribute, that would naturally lead to all of the other quantitative things like citation, degree, paper, and so on. But it would be more because you would step up and make space for others to contribute. So in this talk, I'll focus, since I'm from computer science, focus more on computing research in general. I'll share some examples of Turing Award winners, which is the highest award in computer science, a little bit of personal experience, and finish. So contributions in computer science, at least, we categorize them under three kinds. One of them is the conceptual contribution, where the focus is really on the imagination. And one nice example of this is this work by Frances Allen. In fact, she wrote very few publications, but she revolutionized the field of compilation so that whatever programs we write today, they get internally converted into program representations. We compile them, execute them. All of this entire technology is really, a lot of it is her idea of how to do it. So she has really revolutionized it with her imagination. Another kind of contribution, which is fairly important in computer science, it is a technical field, is the technical contribution. And one can make very, very valuable technical contribution. Here again, at least two kinds I can mention based on two Turing Award winning works. One is this work which brought in ideas from philosophy into computer science to build this temporal logics. So temporal logics already existed in philosophy, but then they were brought into computer science to describe properties of programs. This is what I call as a transplantation style, because you really transplant ideas which exist maybe in other fields into computer science. And the other is maybe cross-fertilization. There may be different domains in computer science, like this work on model checking, which built on the ideas from temporal logics to develop automated checking procedures, which kind of cross-fertilize the subdomains of logic and algorithms. So today, so these are of really significant contributions that we are talking about. Today, this kind of technology taken together is used to check critical properties of the software in the car that we are driving, also to check processors, so used for both hardware and software verification. These are really very significant contributions and significant technical contributions that you can make. Another kind of contribution that can be made, not to make anything straight-jacketed, but which is primarily utilitarian. So a lot of computer science research is about building systems, building computer systems which act as a great enabler, building a technology which is a great enabler. And one example of that is this work on the Unix operating system, which has actually influenced the Mac OS operating system, which probably you might be running right now as we are listening or participating in this talk. Of course, this kind of utilitarian contribution would also require a lot of technical contributions. So this is the sort of the very brief summary of some of the very significant developments and trying to show how you can make various kinds of contributions in the field of computer science. Now, suppose you are starting off your PhD and you have different ideas. So how do you really evaluate them? How do you decide? Of course, I mean a PhD in computer science for the purposes of this talk. How do you really evaluate them? How do you decide that what is the right way to go? And how do you chart out new directions? How do you evaluate their technical or conceptual or utilitarian contributions? So this really brings us to this third eye of the PhD, where we even try to go beyond high quality problem solving. Problem solving is, of course, very important in computer science. It is kind of inherent in the field because a lot of the work is in algorithms, and algorithms is all about problem solving. But if you could even go beyond this high quality problem solving and try to make space for others to contribute so that they can also solve certain problems and chart out new directions. So just to share a little bit of my own experience, I'll talk a little bit about this research that started off actually all the way back in 1976 in the field of software testing via symbolic execution. Symbolic execution is a way of logically analyzing programs. And it was proposed, and just to chart out how things evolve in the field of computer science, this was proposed way back in 1976 when I was also very extremely young. And but then it was not a practical idea. Around 2005 or so, due to the growth of constraint solvers, it became practical and it became feasible to use it for the purpose of reasoning about programs. So just to show this little bit of this throwback and how we can move from there to chart out a little bit of the journey that we take in the process of research, talking about the process a little bit. So this is actually the paper from 1976, which appeared in Communications of the ACM. The key idea was already there that both the testing and the proving about programs, these are extreme alternatives. And this paper already presents an idea about how to unify them both by logically reasoning about programs. But then the underlying technology that is needed for this reasoning, it was not there. Around 2005, this became feasible. It is possible that you have a software and some tests, some seed tests, initial tests, and then you can see the behavior of these tests that you have. You can capture it in logic and you can mutate those logical formula so that you can explore more behaviors. So this is one way in which the field evolved in this 30 years due to the growth in the solver technology. So putting it in an even larger perspective in the overall vision of artificial intelligence, which today a lot of you would be interested in. So the field of artificial intelligence has started all the way from 1950s and has evolved in at least two dimensions. One is the symbolic reasoning or symbolic artificial intelligence, and the other is the biologically inspired artificial intelligence, such as genetic algorithms and neural networks, and with a lot of applications in computer vision. So in parallel, the symbolic domain of artificial intelligence has evolved, and symbolic execution has been proposed as an analysis technology. So this is what happened in 2005. What can we do from it? We can go further and we can imagine that can we think of intelligent programming or autonomous programming? Can we give the programs a life just like a human being? Suppose you are sick, but not too much, okay? You could either go to the doctor or you could just go to the pharmacy, probably get a Panadol or Tylenol and feel a little bit better. Okay, can the programs do this? Can they correct them on their own? Looks like it is possible with some of this growth in the symbolic AI. So here I'll spend a little bit of time only in this slide. Here I take a very simple example of triangle classification. All of us have gone through school, so we know this, and we can clearly see the definition of the isosceles triangle is wrong. Okay, because the isosceles triangle is one where two of the three sides are equal. So now you can turn this into a query. The program could rectify itself because it knows that it is wrong, because probably once you test the program, you have certain tests that are failing. The program could rectify itself by saying that, okay, I'm failing. So what is the appropriate expression? What is the piece of code that I should insert here to make myself successful? And then you can really turn this into a logical inference problem. Note that the program is triggering these processes on its own. So the program is intelligent and autonomous and is triggering these processes on its own and asks these kind of questions that, okay, I need to put some expression here, which for 2, 2, and 3 returns true, and so on. It gets this kind of a constraint. And then through search or biologically inspired artificial intelligence, it could try to answer a solution, rather provide a solution which answers these constraints. So through a collaboration of the symbolic artificial intelligence and the biologically inspired artificial intelligence, the program could really recover itself autonomously. And just in case you are thinking that this is only restricted to the triangle example, this could be used for automatically fixing security vulnerabilities. This is a pernicious heartbleed bug that you are probably familiar with, and this could reduce exposure to vulnerabilities. And overall, this kind of just to show, just from this little idea of how we can test programs, we came to symbolic reasoning, from there we came to intelligent programming, and from there we can build up the idea all the way to autonomous systems, because as we know, learning of today, the deep learning has a lot of corner cases which leads to probably potential accidents. So we can envision that in future, the software systems of tomorrow, which will probably co-opt some deep learning components, and some of these corner cases or the unpredictability of the deep learning components will be taken care of by the rest of the software system, compensating for it and repairing itself with technology like the one that I mentioned. And we are, in fact, at NUS studying these kind of directions, very futuristic directions. And this is one of the vehicles, the National Satellite of Excellence in Trustworthy Software Systems, where we are studying these really speculative and futuristic directions. It is not all speculative, it's also perspective. This is a recently completed security research project that we finished in collaboration with several of my colleagues in the security group. And these are all their students, all of our students who have graduated, and they have really found fantastic academic placements. This is all in the last few years, fantastic academic placements all over the world, in US, UK, Australia, and other places, and in China. And just stepping out in the computer science department also, our colleagues are extremely active in getting many, many awards. This is just a sampler of many of the awards received by our distinguished colleagues in the fields of databases, multimedia, programming languages and software engineering, systems, and many others, and algorithms. And also in this related, our Department of Information Systems and Analytics, also our colleagues have received many, many awards in healthcare analytics, healthcare informatics, and many, many other areas. So as I conclude, I would urge, stepping out now back into the general, I would really urge you all, us all, to look beyond the so-called hot areas. It's perfectly okay to look into the technology trends, but also we need to look into it more deeply. So there is this very famous saying by very, very well-known people that if you can see a bandwagon, it's too late. So research is never about jumping into a bandwagon. And also, more pragmatically speaking, I can give lots of examples from the history of computer science. Since PhD takes 5 years or so, an area which is very hot in 2020 is rather unlikely to be very hot in 2025. There are many, many examples from the past where they have not remained hot. So therefore, you really have to develop this prospective notion and not just get stuck in the present, and decide your interest, find your passion, and more than that, you go beyond the technical contributions into the conceptual contributions so that you can chart directions. So I would always say that we go beyond the hot areas, we create hot areas from the cool ones. I won't say cold ones, but from the areas which are really cool, we try to create hot areas using our third eye, which is the imagination. So it is certainly possible to build up a really good and excellent PhD with strong interest, initiative, introspection, and intuition. But what would really set us apart in the research is the imagination. And with this is really my last slide. With this, I would really encourage you all to not get boxed in and exercise your imagination as you go on into the research journey. If you have further questions, this is my email. I will flash this later.
Thanks, Abhik, for a very interesting talk. That's the fourth eye, which is interesting. But anyway, so great communicator. Actually, I want to be your PhD student. Actually, now you're such a great talk and actually summarize the basically computing research in a very succinct way. So any question from the students? Please raise your hand or type in the Q&A panel. Let me see. Well, while we wait for students to wake up, okay. So maybe I ask a big your question. So you mentioned that problem solving and both problem solving and problem formulation are important for computer science. So are there specific areas of computer science where the role or the different role of problem solving and problem formulations are different?
Certainly. So there are really very important and classical problems. They are, of course, in algorithms and complexity. There are very, very important problems where the key issue is really the problem solving. But we can also look into other areas, like, for example, AI is today a very, very emerging area. So for such areas, AI, cybersecurity, there would certainly be always the role of both problem solving and problem formulation. So it depends a little bit about the sub area of computer science also. It's really not so much one size fits all, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so there's one, Abhi, I don't know if you can open the Q&A thing.
Yeah, I
So
have.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there's question, maybe read it out. While what you stated was right with respect to starting on the topic chosen today, but it not be relevant 5 years down the line. So how do we go ahead and predict, right? I'll go ahead and with the application process and on also which area to use. And at a broad area, I know my interest, but there's always more depth to uncover. This is from Rajesh.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's really an excellent question. The answer for that might be a little bit in ourselves. So the background that we have and the strengths that we have. Because in the end, the research will be primarily, the PhD research will certainly be primarily done by you, of course, in collaboration with your advisor and also other collaborators all over the world. world, but you are really the one taking ownership of it. So it's very important to see where you are coming from, where we are coming from, and where we want to get towards, sort of the beginning of the journey and the end of at least the PhD journey, not the research journey. Uh, Look into your own strengths. I understand this may be a little bit of a general answer, but look into your own strengths and try to see whether you can add value. If you can add value to specific areas which are very hot and you can make them even hotter, more power to you. That would be certainly nice. But there could also be very significant opportunities to an area which is cool. Means maybe it's really nice. Means AI is today so important. Maybe 10 years ago, maybe if we were having this talk, probably we would not be discussing that much about AI, isn't it? But there are certain people who persisted with it and kind of made the technology to a shape where we are all discussing about it. So that's why it's quite important to chart out the direction yourself and think about your own strengths and also weaknesses. It's best to be honest to ourselves.
Yeah. Thanks, Abhik. There was a question on creating hot zones from the cool one, but I think you answer that. Maybe I elaborate a little bit more. So hot areas now, if you do deep learning, I think it's very hot, but I don't know if you want to do deep learning. I'm not very sure whether deep learning will continue to be so hot 5 years from now. So you may want to start planning for the next level, also to create more so-called impact, right? Not to jump onto the bandwagon. Um, because when you see it, you'll be crushed. Okay, so the next question, I think from Tanya, I thought was interesting. Is it common to have business school candidates at School of Computer Science collaborating through a candidate to interdisciplinary aspect? But can there be a candidate from joint candidate, I think suppose, from business school with supervisor from computer science? Has that happened? Mm,
Certainly, sorry, Sikyong, yeah,
yep.
certainly, I think that is certainly possible, particularly in the field of analytics. There is potentially very significant intersection that computer science and business school could play together, and probably we are not doing as much, and we could, by we, I don't mean not just ourselves, but all over the world there isn't that much being done on this. And this is certainly an example. This is exactly the kind of example that I am talking of, that try to create hot areas from cool ones. So this is a really cool area, right? As we are talking about it, that in analytics try to come both from the business school and the computer science perspective. But maybe worldwide, not that much is being done. And this is exactly where you can probably create a hot area.
Yeah, great. Maybe one last question, a quick related one. This student has a master's in data science from health background in pharmacy, want to work on health informatics. So would you consider candidates like him or her, or would you just take candidates from computer science?
I think we take candidates from various backgrounds, because computer science, by its very nature, has an interdisciplinary aspect
Hmm.
to it.
Yeah.
So I think certainly, and in fact, candidates from other areas can bring in very fresh perspectives. I myself have a PhD student from maths at this point of time. He has not done any computer science. Of course, he took a few courses maybe, but
Mhm.
his undergraduate degrees in maths. So maths, engineering, business school. So by its very nature, it is interdisciplinary, and that's great. That's really what would take the discipline forward. And once again, not to repeat my theme, but would really allow us to look beyond the hot areas of today into the hot areas of tomorrow, because that's really what is important. Even if we are interested in the outcomes, we will have more pleasant outcomes that way if we look into the hot areas of tomorrow, not the ones of today.
Thanks, Abhik. All right. Thank you. Thank you all for your question. And please show you, you showing
Thank you.
your email. So if you have any further question, I think there's something about research and all this, please just email Professor, okay? Or